I spent nearly 50 hours over the past 2 weeks building the strongest army I could conceptualize to fight Bellanoir Libero inside of Palworld. I'm actually so committed to this that I haven't turned off my computer in more than 5 days to keep breeding going at all times. I've researched multiple strategies on how to optimize Pal strength, and I've learned a ton about how this Ultra Bellanoir fight actually works. Without further ado, let me show you how I built this ultimate Astegon team in just 2 weeks. I hope you enjoy. So I needed to start off this process by adding extra breeding farms to my base so I could actually go through all the breeding I needed to do for this Astegon quickly. To get the ideal traits I wanted, more on that in a bit, I bred a lot of Astegons together and didn't really worry about going out and catching a few. The reason I only went with breeding them is because not many Astegons actually spawn on the map at a time. I decided to just do the breeding route because I needed to get mutations on my Astegons, and I already need a lot of spare Astegons for the future condensing I plan to do in this project, so it was a win-win. I also quickly sold a lot of pals that were in my box because it was going to fill up really quickly with Astegons. As I'm opening this batch of eggs, I want to explain something really quickly. A large majority of this project is just me sitting AFK, waiting for eggs to be bred down, and then hatching them in the incubators. For the sake of this video not being a snooze fest, I'm just going to cut to the best breeding moments I had. It's not much in the video, but it was a lot of time for myself. If you do want a full breeding guide, please let me know in the comments. So the breeders I went with for the first 250 or so eggs consisted of one pair that had all the traits I wanted besides Ferocious, which were Musclehead, Divine Dragon, and Legend, and one pair which consisted of one that had just Divine Dragon and one with Legend and Musclehead. I wanted to do 2 different pairings to test which one gave me mutations at a higher rate and could get me the Ferocious trait I needed to add to these other 3 traits. Spoiler, it was the second pairing by a long shot. About 250 eggs into the process, I finally hatched this. Getting Ferocious was the final step I needed to create the perfect Astegons. As you can see, I was a little freaked out because it was so exciting that I finally had what I needed. Immediately after getting this Ferocious Musclehead Astegon, I combined it with a Legend and Divine Dragon Astegon to hopefully get the perfect traits. I finally had the missing puzzle piece to my Astegon army. So this is that huge jump I was talking about. I basically went AFK on my computer for about 3 hours, came back, put eggs in the incubator, went away for 3 more hours, and then came back again. And after doing all of that, I had 4 perfect Astegons already bred together. This was the first one I fully condensed to 4 stars, and it was really satisfying to get this first step out of the way. I plan to have 10 total Astegons because this is only the first step in a multi-episode series I'm doing to take on Ultra Bellanoir Libero as a solo player. After gloating, I went back and condensed another Astegon to 3 stars and realized just how many Astegons I would actually need to make 10 4-star Astegons. This was going to take a long time. Out of the 4 perfect Astegons I just mentioned having, 3 of them were female and 1 was a male. This was unfortunate because I couldn't just have 2 perfect breeding pairs, but I did the best I could and just bred a perfect pair with a perfect female and a basic male. I went with a basic male to avoid mutations because I already had the traits I wanted. Also, for those of you who are curious, yes, farming for cakes for this entire challenge was absolutely a pain in my ass. I had to keep cycling between more chickpeas and more mozzarinas because I kept running out of eggs, and then I ran out of milk, and it went back and forth the entire time. I ended up making pretty much 1,000 cakes for this challenge, and that was terrible. At this point, I was about 6 days into the challenge, and I realized that I was going to run out of time at the pace I was going. So here's what I started doing. For about 5 days, I set alarms for myself in 2-hour increments overnight so I could go on and cycle out the eggs. This way I could completely avoid the 20 egg cap per breeding farm actually affecting my speed at making Astegons. It also enabled me to have more eggs on an incubation timer overnight, which was really efficient. As you may be able to tell, I'm going a little insane. For the next few days, I just continued rinsing and repeating this exact process. I bred Astegons, made cakes, condensed Astegons when I had enough to spare, and slowly lost my mind. After 5 days straight of repeating this, I decided to call it quits. I ended up having 5 4-star Astegons and 5 3-star Astegons. While it wasn't the 10 4-star Astegons I was hoping for, I was still really proud of what I had accomplished. This final condensation I did hurt a little more than the last ones because almost all the Astegons I used were perfectly traded. I just had so many of them that I decided to throw some in because I was never going to level this many to level 50 anyway. Hopefully it was all worth it. Also, for those of you who are curious, I ended up breeding a total of 872 Astegons. I now had a few other things I needed to complete before I could actually take on this boss. I needed to level my pals to 50, and I needed to infuse them with pal souls to buff their stats. Here's how I went about doing these 2 things. I started the condensation process by just using what I had already gotten throughout my playthrough naturally. My main focus was maxing out the defense on everything. I didn't really care about anything else. In retrospect, I absolutely should have also focused on max health, but I didn't do that here for some reason. I quickly noticed that I was going to run out of souls, so I scoured the webs and found a way that I thought would be the most efficient to farm souls passively. Here's what I came up with. In the most recent update, they've enabled us to finally change souls from certain sizes to other sizes. For example, one large soul can become 2 medium souls, one medium soul can become 2 small souls, and it actually goes the other way as well. This can all be done in the Crusher, by the way. For my research, it seemed that getting a lot of large souls would be the most efficient way to get any type of condensation I actually needed. After some extra research, it became very clear to me that the best way to farm large souls passively was to butcher Anubises. A few Anubises later, I could finally condense all my Astegons to have max defense. These condensations are really underrated by some players, but they're incredibly valuable. They actually buff any stat in there by 30%, which is a very noticeable difference when you have pals as strong as these Astegons. The last step before I could fight this boss was to level my Astegons. The way I went about doing this was fighting Marcus and Phalaris with the Astegons in my party. Full transparency, I did set the XP rate to 20. I simply didn't have time to do another grindy part of the process like farming 13 Marcus and Phalaris per 4 Astegons to get the max level. It wouldn't have been fun for me or you because it would have taken me forever and it would have been a 30-second segment in the video either way. I changed a few of my moves on the Astegons as well to replace some of the dark type moves with some powerful dragon moves. The reason I did this, of course, is because dragon moves are super effective against dark moves, which is the type that Bellanoir Libero is for the majority of the fight. I also wasted a few hours because I thought I actually needed skill fruit trees to drop me certain dragon moves to put on the Astegons. It turns out the Astegons actually just learn all the relevant moves by themselves without actually needed to get any skill fruits at all. With 2 weeks, hundreds of hours racked into the game, and many sleepless nights, I was finally ready. Or so I thought. Here's how the fight went. As my Astegon started to faint, I frantically went to the PAL box to try to sub out to keep the fight alive. I couldn't win. As a matter of fact, I wasn't even close. Frantically subbing in pals wasn't going to save my fight. I tried for a few more minutes, but I just lost. I couldn't do enough damage. I knew there was an entire second phase that I hadn't even touched yet, and it was completely doomed. So I just ran away and watched as the fight ended, completely out of my control. Although the fight did go poorly, I still had hope because I had multiple other plans for builds that I wanted to do to combine with this Astegon one to finally take out this boss as a solo player. Unfortunately, the fight was not the only thing that I lost. During the frantic substitutions, apparently I put my Frostallion from the strongest team video that I did a few weeks ago into the fight. This Frostallion took me hours and hours to make, and when the box got destroyed by Bellanoir Libero, the Frostallion was gone. It didn't faint for 10 minutes, it was just permanently gone because the box broke while it was in the box. I looked everywhere for it. I looked on the floor of the desert, I looked in my box, it just wasn't there. I've been using this thing for every dungeon run I've been doing, for every fight I was doing to farm XP besides the Marcus and Phalaris one. It sucked. Easily my most important pal, the pal I've worked the hardest on, gone in a blink of an eye. And it was completely avoidable too. I was watching as the box was getting destroyed. I could have gone there. I could have put the Frostallion back in the box. I just didn't know. The only thing I do know now is I need to beat this boss to avenge this Frostallion and win finally. I'm not going to glitch this boss. I'm not going to do anything besides completely destroying it with what I build. For context, these Astegons really hold up against the basic Bellanoir and the Bellanoir Libero, the normal one. So if you want to use these things, they are really strong. They're just not good enough to take on Ultra by yourself. Even if I optimized that 30% max health or anything like that, it wouldn't have changed the result. So at the end of the day, I lost this battle. But the war is not over. I have 2 more episodes coming where I'm making even more insane builds than this one, and they're coming very soon. If you're excited for those and enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. This is a really new channel and I really appreciate the support. Since you guys already hit that 1,000 sub goal so quickly, I will be doing a challenge run in May that is absolutely ridiculous. For every 100 subs I get past 1,000 before the end of April, I'll add an extra challenge to it to make it even more difficult. Thank you all so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed. This has been Jase, and I'll see you guys next time.